Gracie Jiu-Jitsu rocks. Welcome to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast, a podcast dedicated to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and all things Gracie, including self-defense, competition, anti-bullying, women's self-defense and empowerment, nutrition, and most especially, the people involved in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. This podcast is for the average Joe. It's for anyone who practices, trains, teaches, or just loves to talk about or hear about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. We'll explore the lives of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, how they got involved in the art, and what effect it's had on their lives. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Welcome to episode 98 of the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast. As always, I'm your host, Marty Josie, and thanks for listening. Today, my guest will be Professor Flavio Almeida. But before we get to that, let's start off with a martial arts quote, and then we'll do a Meet the Listener segment. Okay, our quote is, "My father was a naturalist and a very spiritual person, who had a great desire to pass on his knowledge to others, so that they could receive the benefits of jiu-jitsu as well. Growing up in this environment, I learned the art of jiu-jitsu is actually a method through which one strives for self-perfection." And that quote is from Master Carlos Gracie Jr. Okay, moving now to our Meet the Listener segment. Today we'll be meeting Kevin Aldridge. So let's meet Kevin now. All right, Kevin, welcome to the show, my friend.
Oh, thanks for having me on, sir. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So let's just start off by just letting everybody know how long you've been training and where you currently train, Kevin.
Sure. I've been training for 11 years, and I currently train at Gracie Barra Scottsdale.
Nice. And you're one of the instructors there, right?
Yes, sir, I am.
Nice. Well, I know the students there are lucky to have you, Kevin. Tell us one thing that's really great about training at your academy.
Sure, sir. The oriented approach, the teachings that are aligned with the Gracie Barra method, our head Diogo Fiera, he pushes us to get better each day. It's just a great, energized training.
Awesome. And it sounds like you guys go to great lengths to create a wonderful atmosphere, which is always really nice.
Yes, sir, we do.
So what about when you're not training, when your time off the mat? Do you have any hobbies, or what do you do when you're not training?
Yes, sir. I like to stand up. I like to go hiking. I'm a lifelong learner, so I continue to pursue my goals, and I'm a big NASCAR fan.
Interesting. You know, I'm from North Carolina. I'm sure you know, down towards Charlotte area, there's a lot of NASCAR there.
Yes, sir. Go Joe Gibbs Racing. Yeah.
Nice. All right. So tell me, what do you like about the podcast, Kevin?
The podcast allows us to connect martial artists, hear their journey, and just kind of see and hear how jiu-jitsu has impacted their lives and people around them and in their community.
Okay. So that feeling of being connected and everything, you feel like that you get that from the show?
Sir, even when I'm just hearing it, I can visualize a lot of things in my mind when I'm driving or I'm going for. It's just a great outlet for it.
Excellent. So, if you would share with us maybe something you've learned along your jiu-jitsu journey. I know you've had a lot of experience and learned from a lot of great teachers. What's a lesson or two that sticks out in your mind, Kevin, that you can share with the audience about what you've learned?
A few things that I've learned is just it's about the race, it's the journey, and I know we hear that a lot. And each one of us have our additional, our specific calling within the art. And I just feel like if I can around me better than me, to just show them where who can impact their life and change it, whether it be professionally, on the mats. That's invaluable knowledge that I can share with friends and students.
Excellent, excellent. And anybody that you want to thank or shout out to?
I have a few people that really impacted me as a martial artist and a teacher, and that would be Professor Flavio Costa and Master Gracie Barra, Georgia, Nick Gregoriadis, Andrew Herr, Felipe de la Malika at Gracie Barra headquarters, Kyron Gracie, and last but not least, Flavio Almeida. He just is a real important role model here at Gracie Barra, and he just is the most giving guy I know, and is just a great positive supporter for us all.
Excellent. Sounds like you got a lot of people that's had a major impact, a very positive impact on your life and your jiu-jitsu. That's great. And I'm thrilled to be able to have Professor Flavio Almeida on the show today. So I got to thank you for steering me towards him. So I really do appreciate that. You're
welcome, sir. Yeah, Flavio's a great guy.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the impact you make in people's lives through jiu-jitsu. And thanks for being a listener, man. I really appreciate it, Kevin. And thank you for allowing the listeners to get to know you a little better.
Oh, sir, it's an honor, and thank you for on this segment. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. All right, be well. Okay, really enjoyed meeting Kevin. Next up is our interview. My guest today is Professor Flavio Almeida, who is the Executive Director of Gracie Barra North America. He's a 4th degree black belt under the legendary Carlos Gracie Jr. and co-owner and head instructor of multiple Gracie Barra academies in Arizona and California. Professor Flavio recently won gold at the World's Masters World Championships, making him a 3-time Masters World champion. In this interview, he talks about his recent victory at the Masters Worlds, what it takes to compete and succeed at the highest levels, growing up with his brother, BJJ black belt and UFC fighter Ricardo Almeida, his relationship with Master Carlos Gracie Jr., and the impact he's had on his life, the secret to his success in business and as a school owner, his BJJ Sweeps DVD, the biggest influences on his life, and much more. So I know you're going to enjoy this interview with Professor Flavio. After the interview, make sure you stick around for the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. And now, without further ado, let's meet Professor Flavio Almeida. Okay, it's my privilege and honor to be speaking with Professor Flavio Almeida, and he's a 4th degree black belt under the legendary Carlos Gracie Jr. and co-owner and head instructor of multiple Gracie Barra academies in California and Arizona. So welcome, sir, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you, Marty. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
So let's just jump right in and talk about your recent win at the 2018 World Masters Championships. And this was your 3rd World Championship for you and was the culmination of 25 years of competing as a Gracie Barra athlete. So I just wanted to say congratulations. That's a huge, huge thing. And what an incredible accomplishment. And I noticed on your Facebook you had a post that said, "I have done less than I wanted, but much more than I could. My mission is accomplished." So start by just telling us what that latest victory and event was like for you, and then maybe elaborate a little bit on what you meant by that post.
Yeah, so for me, I love competing. You know, it's been a big part of my life and big part of who I am. I think a big part of my identity, you know, comes from being an athlete. So it's a tough decision to step away from it, but it was time, you know, taking too much. It was consuming too much from me, more than it should at this point of my life. You know, I have a lot of other roles that I'm trying to excel on. So competition was taxing other incredible opportunities that I have to contribute more to my family and my team. As far as like that accomplishment, man, winning a world championships is always an incredible feeling, something that I think few have the privilege to experience. And the bracket was very, very difficult to my surprise. I usually don't look at brackets before. I don't study who am I going against. I was very surprised with the level, which makes the victory even more rewarding, you know. The fact that I had the chance of concluding my competition career with a win, and I felt, that's another thing, like sometimes you win and you don't feel like you competed well. On this tournament, I felt like I competed really well. For the time that I put into it, I felt great. And I was able to execute on a game plan that was very outside of my standard jiu-jitsu. You know, I was pulling guard and doing some pretty crazy sweeps. So it was really, really exciting, you know, so super pumped. And on my post, you know, I said, I've done much more than I could, but I didn't do everything that I wanted. I think as an athlete, as a jiu-jitsu athlete, you always you dream about being the best, right? At every stage of your career. And I had a rough transition from brown belt to black belt, and I had to step out of competition for a while to finish school. So I never had a chance to win, you know, the most notorious title, which is the World Championships as an adult in the black belt division. And I know that I had if I had put everything into it, I know that I could have gotten there, but I never did. So that's something that I'm always going to remember as with a sour taste, you know, like something that I really wanted to do, but I never did. But hey, that's okay, man. I got a bronze medal a few times, and in the last tournament I lost, man, I promised myself that I was never going to lose something that was important to me again in my life. And I think those defeats made me a better fighter, they made me a better teacher, and they made me a better man. So better than the gold medals is the lessons you learn from it, you know.
Nice. Well said. And, you know, I think it's kind of human nature, or at least for most of us, to not minimize, but not fully appreciate, you know, the things we've accomplished, but kind of dwell at least sometimes on that mountain we didn't get to climb, so to speak. But man, you've done so much, and you've had such a successful competition career, including multiple Pan Am World Championship titles and in multiple categories. I know that in 2016-17 season of the IBJJF, you were ranked #1, Masters 2, and have had such a long list of different victories and accomplishments dating way back when you were a world champion as a blue belt in '97. So thinking about that, share with us your thoughts on what it takes to compete successfully at the highest level.
It's changed over time, Marty. I think the sport, jiu-jitsu is fascinating, right? It's constantly evolving, and it's, you know, back in 1997, it was the second World Championships, I believe, and it was much smaller than what it is now. So what it took for you to succeed back then is very different than what it takes now. Back then, we didn't have the resources that are available to young athletes today, but we also didn't have this level of competition. You know, there's, you know, back in the 1997, you know, you had Carlson Gracie, you had Gracie Barra, and I think that was about it, man. There was, you know, I don't want to say anything bad, but all the teams that we know nowadays, they didn't exist. And I'm pretty sure even Alliance didn't exist, right? Fabio Gurgel and Jacaré and Alexandre Paiva, they hadn't come together yet. So just for you to see how different it was back then. So to answer your question, I believe one thing that is common is for you to become a world champion, you have to live the life of a world champion. You know, you have to be willing to make sacrifices. And it's something I always tell my students and athletes that are training under me now, you know, for you to be a world champion, you're going to have to make very difficult sacrifices, you know, like jiu-jitsu is an amateur sport. So you won't be able to have a full-time dedication to this unless you're a playboy and your parents are paying for your bills. So you're going to have to make a living somehow. You can't sacrifice that. You're going to have to train really hard, unless you're not going to get there. So one thing that you're going to have to sacrifice as a young man or woman is going to be the fun part of your life. And a lot of people are not willing to do that. And back then we had to do it. I remember training like a maniac, you know, Monday through Saturday. And I was, you know, my social life was to the bare minimum. And I think the same thing has to be done nowadays. And I think one of the problems that we face nowadays is that you can get credits for trying, which is very awkward. I see a lot of young athletes, trying to build a persona online, and there is no like real accomplishments behind it. It's almost like they're competing so they can make a freaking Instagram post, which doesn't make any sense to me. So I think that the athletes nowadays, they need to be extremely in love with the sport to be able to really understand their reasons and do it for the love of the sport. Because back in the day, we didn't have all of these like rewards, like likes and things like that. So we really did it for the love of the sport. Nowadays, young athletes need to know their reasons, and if they want to get there, they need to find the love for jiu-jitsu, love for hard work, willingness to sacrifice, and man, train really hard because the level up there is incredible.
Indeed, it is. I love how I love that advice that you gave. It's one thing to be able to do it as a pro and be paid to train constantly, but when you have to make your own living and still put in the time, man, that's tough. That takes a lot of discipline. And like you said, it's changed a lot over the years. So good advice. I was going to ask you if you had any advice for anyone just starting out, but I think all that applies. What about for someone as they get a little older in years? How do you feel like that? Does their training need to change, and how so? Or what does that mean as you get older as a jiu-jitsu athlete?
Man, I think there's two answers to that question. If your question is more applicable to older athletes that still want to compete, I think they have to be really smart about the way they're training. And when we're young, the 95 to 100% of our training time goes towards increasing our technical performance, being mental, physical, or making our techniques better. And I think as you get older, you have to dedicate a good chunk of your training time to just taking care of your body. Instead of thinking about getting stronger, just make sure that you focus on healing the many injuries that you accumulate over time, right? I spent as much time on taking care of my lower back as I do doing deadlifts, for example, like stretching and doing stuff that is going to allow your body to handle the pressure, because injuries become a constant as you get older instead of something that is temporary when you're younger. So my advice to Masters competitors is that pay a lot of attention to your body, work hard to stretch your limits, but don't neglect the injuries, because they might make you miserable if you don't take them into consideration. Now, for the lifestyle practitioners, which is the majority of us, including myself now, I think the best example is Master Carlos Gracie Jr. No ego. He's still training now. There's really zero ego there. He still wants to do well. Don't get me wrong. He's a competitive guy, but he's training for the sake of being able to practice the art that he loves. It has nothing to do with results or being able to show off to anybody. It's really about being able to make his techniques better, experiment, and train very smart. Don't do the moves that are just exciting if they are threatening to certain conditions of your body. And most important, be very picky with your training partners. One of the luxuries that we get as we get older and we earn degrees in our black belts is that at least we get to choose our training partners, and I think that the older we get, the more our body starts to feel the effects of jiu-jitsu. The smarter we have to be on picking the training partners that allow us to flow and have a good training experience without hurting ourselves.
Absolutely. I think the big takeaway, well, you said a lot of great things there, but the big takeaway is just being smart and not putting yourself in a position to get injured.
100%.
And a lot of self-care. So let's change gears for just a moment, Professor, and talk about how you got started. How did you get started in BJJ, and what was it like in the kind of the early years, and how's that developed through your journey?
Sure. My journey starts in 1993. I was 13 years old, so a young teenager. We grew up in a neighborhood called Barra, right, where Gracie Barra was located. Gracie Barra was already there, started in 1986. And it's always, you you have the kids that you play, and there was bullying going on around in our neighborhood, and my father couldn't stand that idea, and he took us to martial arts. I remember going to Gracie Barra, and then Ricardo and I, we were way too young, and the chaotic environment of a jiu-jitsu academy back in the 90s was a little intimidating for us. There's not a lot of kids in the program. So we ended up joining a karate school, which is pretty interesting. And then eventually Ricardo's best friend from high school was a Gracie Barra student already. It was like maybe a year and a half later, or 2 years later. And then he brought Ricardo to Gracie Barra. And then Ricardo kept, bugging me to go. And then about a year later, I went to Gracie Barra. So that's how I started. It was really like just Ricardo's influence on me and my father's desire to instill some like self-confidence and self-defense skills. I think most of us start that way as a kid. And then, it took off from there. One thing that I really connected with in Jiu-Jitsu was the competitive side of it, right? It's real, whereas in karate, you punch in the air and you have people evaluating how well you do that. In Jiu-Jitsu, every day you get that exchange of techniques, that exchange of energy with somebody else, and you don't get hurt. And that's very challenging. And I connected with that right away. And my instructors from the kids program back then invited me to participate on competition. Was the Rio de Janeiro State Championships. And when I competed, I just like fell in love with it, and I just took off from there.
Nice. Now, I think you said your brother Ricardo started about a year before you, and he's also a few years older than you. Is that right?
True, yeah. Ricardo's 3 years older.
Okay. So was that relationship as far as jiu-jitsu, was it very competitive between you guys, or was it just he was really very supportive, or how was that?
Ricardo was always an amazing mentor in my life in all senses, and jiu-jitsu was the same thing. Of course, when you're young, you always have like that brothers rivalry, which is very healthy. We used to fist fight a lot until jiu-jitsu came to our lives, and then we channeled that to the mats. And Ricardo was always much more technical than me, and he still is. He knows much more jiu-jitsu than I do, and he just my jiu-jitsu has always been very physical, right? So he helped me really make the transition to understand that there's more technique than muscles into jiu-jitsu, and he's been an incredible mentor. But I don't think the rivalry lasted more than maybe a few months into jiu-jitsu, and after that it was just like more like a older brother, like a mentor relationship. He was always very good at it, and he always like opened the way for me as a practitioner, and then eventually as a teacher, and eventually as an entrepreneur. He always I was always kind of following his footsteps and trying to be like him. He always was, and he still is one of my heroes. So Ricardo was really an example of excellence that I always tried to gravitate towards.
Wow. What a great thing to have someone like that in your life, in your corner, so to speak. And you guys obviously have an incredible bond and relationship, so that's awesome. He also gave you your nickname, is that correct?
Yeah, so Ricardo was the big dog, right? It was a TV show in Brazil that there was this character called the Big Dog. He was like the king of the mafia, kind of like a godfather. He was very mean and grumpy, and Ricardo was kind of like that as a teenager. So the surfers on the beach that we used to go surf nicknamed Ricardo Big Dog. And then when he went to Gracie Barra, naturally a lot of those guys were also training, so Ricardo became the big dog there. And then when I joined, nobody knew my name, so it was just natural to call me the little dog, I guess.
How do you actually say that in Portuguese? I was going to try to say it, but I think I'm going to butcher it. So how do you say that in Portuguese?
It's a cachorrinho. It's a hard one, man, because the CH and the NH is very hard for English speakers. But yeah, it's a cachorrinho.
Nice. So you mentioned Master Carlos Gracie Jr. You've been under him for many, many years, and obviously that relationship is very important to you. Can you tell us about that relationship with him and what it's been like being connected to him for all these years?
Yeah, for sure. Master Carlos has always been a father figure for all of us at the Gracie Barra. I don't know of one loyal Gracie Barra team member that doesn't have like a profound admiration and sense of gratitude to him. And it's interesting because many of us, so me, I spend a lot of time with him because we do a lot of work together. But many of us did not have the chance to spend a lot of time with him. But I guess it's how parenting goes. A lot of times we think that it's about the amount of time we spend with our kids or our students. And Master Carlos was really like great at the little time that he had with us. He made it count because he always had a much stronger concern with how you're doing as a person. If you're doing okay, if you're healthy, if you're eating well, if your relationships are good, if you're happy, then he would have about what you can do for him. Let's say you're a fighter and if you can win the next championship for Gracie Barra. And I always sense that from him in many different roles. I did and I do many different things for Gracie Barra. And he's always put the faith and trust in me. And whenever he sees me, he never asks me any numbers or anything on how things are going on the business side of it. All he asks is, how are you doing? Are you training? How is your wife? How is your kids? But it's not like a lot of people can do that, but they just like, it's almost like fake. They do it because they have to. Him, it's like he's sincerely much more interested in that, in how you are doing, than he is on anything else. And I guess it's because he knows that if you're doing well, you'll be able to place your contribution, So my relationship with him has always been that. There is a interesting story that I always tell people is I've always been an exceptional athlete, right? In a sense that I've always been a little bit above average as far as results. And Carlos never talked to me, Marty, never. I would win tournaments. He would always be sitting on that organization table there on the tournaments. He never talked to me. On the Monday practice, he would say, "Hey, good job," but something very distant, Right. I knew that he cared, but it was always distance. But man, and I went on undefeated from, the color belts all the way through black belt. The day I lost, that's the day that he come to talk to me, and he's like, we had this long conversation about what that meant in my career, in my life. And he tried to turn the loss into something positive. There's this famous quote within Gracie Barra that we say, there's no losing in jiu-jitsu, you either win or you learn. And we attribute that to him. And at that moment of my life, it was really a turning point because I wasn't prepared mentally to lose. And he helped me see the good side of defeat and how it represents an incredible opportunity to grow. And I think that that moment definitely was an incredible moment of our relationship, and it carries on until today.
Man, that's amazing. So he really waited until that moment where you really needed him the most to step in.
Yeah, 100%. While things were going fine, he was more distant, and because he knew things were fine there, when I needed. And it was a teachable moment. You can't really teach much to anybody who's winning. They won't listen. But when people lose or people are struggling, now they're ready, and if you want to leave them with a piece of advice, it's time to go,
Absolutely. Anything else that off the top of your head that stands out through all the things? I'm sure you've learned many things from him, but anything else that stands out and just a lesson learned from him?
Yeah, man, simplicity, and authenticity. Carlos created the industry that we're all part of, not by himself, but he placed a significant contribution, in my opinion, more so than any other member of his family. And between, Gracie Barra, IFBJJF, the media side of Jiu-Jitsu, through the pioneer work of Gracie Mag, he's created a lot. He's influenced thousands and thousands of people. And he continues to be the same person. For me, that's an incredible example. His feet is on the ground, his head is on the clouds. He's a big dreamer, but at the end of the day, Monday morning comes, he's gonna wake up, he's gonna stretch, he's gonna do his acai, He's going to go train. He's going to work a little bit. So that's kind of, when I grow up, I want to be like him.
Nice. That's the best compliment you can give anybody, right? To say that.
Yeah.
So, Professor Flavio, you're the head instructor and co-founder of 8 Gracie Barra schools in Southern California and Arizona, and you've taught thousands of students from around the world and awarded more than 30 black belts. You're also a Gracie Barra Oceania Commitment Award winner. So what's the secret to your success as a school owner and a businessman?
Man, it's hard for us to talk about ourselves. What I can say is like what I teach. I teach anybody that works with me to find their purpose. Because from purpose comes passion, and you can't do anything exceptional or extraordinary without passion. The problem with people that are average is really like lack of passion, and if they don't have passion, they really haven't found their purpose. Yeah, so find something that is worth fighting for, something bigger than yourself. Something that you die for. Like not literally, but something that it's worth getting out of the couch and worth, sleeping just a few hours a night. It's worth, putting the best hours of your days on, because if you don't have that, you're never going to be excellent at anything, And then once you, have the purpose, the passion is going to be the juice, of that purpose, and then what's going to happen when you have passion? Then you're going to work your butt off, you're going to be the hardest working person around, and then lastly, all of that has to be channeled towards something that is not about you, it's got to be selfless, and it's got to be channeled towards service. You got to really channel your best self and your best energy and your best hours to something that's going to make a difference on the lives of other people. And not just like the final, in my case, it's not just about the students that I have an opportunity to teach. It has to do with my staff team members, anybody that works with me. Man, from deep down inside, I want to see these people thriving and evolving financially, spiritually, mentally, physically, through Jiu-Jitsu, because of the work that they're doing with me and for Gracie Barra. I think that the secret to succeed is that, again, it all starts with purpose, that becomes passion, that becomes hard work, but everything has to be channeled to service. You gotta be dedicated to making a difference in the lives of as many people as you can, and that's at least to my definition of success. So that's the way to get there.
Well, that's a great definition. I've heard it said a lot of ways, but I really appreciate your definition. Finding that purpose. Without the purpose, life's going to be dull and boring, and it's going to be a chore to put out effort. But if you have that true purpose and you let the passion become the fuel that ignites that purpose, that itself could lead to success, depending on how you define success. But you take it a step further and bring the service piece in, and that's where real fulfillment comes in. So it goes beyond surface level success, and you really become fulfilled by impacting other people's lives. So love that.
Yeah, and man, I think a lot of the younger generation, I'm always because I coach a lot of young men and women here, and I love to spend time with them, and I learn a lot about how they think, and I think they confuse purpose with rewards, right? When they win a tournament, I don't know, might get a cash reward, right? Or they might get a bunch of Facebook likes. And don't get me wrong, those things are great, but if that's what's feeding you, if when you're going to practice because your why is the money, or your why is popularity or fame, man, you got everything upside down. You really got to dig in deep and find a bigger why, and hopefully the why you find, you're going to be mature enough that it's going to have very little to do with you, and it's going to have a lot to do with how your work and your efforts are benefiting other people.
Beautiful, beautiful. I was going to ask you what makes you a great leader and what makes a great leader in general, but I think you summed a lot of it up right then, having the purpose and the passion and real concern about other people's lives and helping them get to where they want to be at, having that impact. So anything else that contributes to being a great leader, in your opinion?
Yeah, for sure. Especially in jiu-jitsu, you got to be real. Yeah. I think people would rather follow or dedicate themselves or work with a leader who is real than a leader who is always trying to be right, And Master Carlos Gracie Jr. was not necessarily right all the time, but he was always real. And whenever he had to have like a tough talk with you, you might not necessarily agree with him, but you know that he's being authentic, he's being real, and he's having that difficult conversation because he believes that things should have done differently. I think it's too much. People sometimes they're in a position of leadership. They get too attached to trying to be right all the time and be perfect. You can't make a mistake. I think when we make mistakes and we bring ourselves down by those mistakes, it allows us to better connect with the people that look up to us.
Absolutely. So we're going to shift gears just a little bit again, and let's talk about your DVD, BJJ, or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Sweeps. For those who don't know that you have a DVD, tell us a little bit about that, please.
So first, it's kind of interesting. That DVD was done in 2007. So it was before Gracie. Actually, it was the year that Gracie Barra came up with the uniforms that we wear with so much pride, right? So the cover of that DVD, I'm like on a plain white uniform, which is a little bit odd to me based on the fact that I'm the executive director of Gracie Barra North America, and I'm usually the one that is convincing, everybody on the importance of wearing uniform and having the pride and all of those things. So that's the first thing. The second thing that is very odd is that the DVD is about sweeps, and I'm not like well known, as at least in competition, for my sweeps, with the exception of this last tournament that I was really like playing more from the bottom than I was from the top, and that was part of the game plan going into it. So I think if people would probably expect more of a guard pass, takedown guard pass to armbar DVD coming from me. So why did we do a DVD on sweep? The guys who did it back then was the guys from Budo Videos. They did not have a DVD on sweep. So when they approached me about the DVD, they said, "Do you want to do a DVD?" And I was broke. I had just arrived in the United States. Man, every dollar counted, right? So they offered me a decent amount of money for me back then. I was like, okay, let's do it. But I told them, what are we going to do this about? It's like, you know what? I think a sweep DVD would sell a lot because there's nothing on sweeps. I'm saying, all right, let's do it. And it's funny because even though I don't practice sweeps as much in tournaments, I love guard, and I have, of course, a lot of technical resources from the bottom, and I think the turnout was awesome. And another thing about this DVD is that Kyron was my dummy, Kyron Gracie, which is now a black belt and an incredible athlete and teacher. He was just a young teenager purple belt, and he was my dummy, and he made all the techniques look really accurate and on point.
That's very cool. Very cool. And I'll put the link to that in the show notes if anybody's interested in that. All right, so who's had the biggest, you mentioned Master Carlos Gracie Jr. having a huge impact on your life. Who else has had the biggest impact on your life? And this can be professionally or personally or both.
You're asking specifically people that I had a chance to meet, right, and spend time with, right?
Yeah, or even if you didn't, whoever had a big influence on you, however you want to answer that question. Okay.
So as far as like human beings in my life that I had a chance to interact a lot, and I still do, I mentioned, of course, Master Carlos and Ricardo, but Professor Marcio Feitosa, who is, incredible, who was an incredible competitor. He's a 3-time world champion, for those people that don't know him, but he's the teacher of, the direct teacher. He was the right arm of Master Carlos Gracie Jr. at Gracie Barra for the generation that came like late 90s to early 2000s. Like Carlos was there, but Marcio was like the hands-on instructor. So myself, like Braulio Shima, Lúcio Lagarto, Jefferson Moura, Roger Gracie, all of those guys, we had tremendous influence from Marcio. And Marcio is one of the, if not the most, one of the most influential people inside Gracie Barra nowadays. And he's behind the development of the organization in all senses. I always tell him, man, you connect to the past and the future like masterfully. Like, he's a big vision caster, he's always thinking about where the organization is going. So for me, he's always helping me stay motivated and make sure that I'm leading, the team that works directly with me, and I'm putting my energy into the right things for the organization. So he's been a huge influence in my life, both professionally and personally. And Marcio happens to be also my brother-in-law. So I definitely had the privilege, and I still do, of learning from him and working with him on a daily basis. And we're all better because of him.
Nice. Yeah, I was going to say, for people who don't know, that your wife Vivi is his sister, and this is a question someone asked me to ask you. That how did you guys meet, your wife Vivi, and did you have to ask Professor Marcio's permission to take his sister out? So Vivi and I, we started dating when I was 19, and I was a brown belt. She was 18. Marcio was the chief instructor, right? And he was the main guy there. He was coaching me. And anyways, did I have to ask his permission? Man, I've always been a good kid, like I've always been, I never went out much, stay away from drugs and alcohol. I've always been like a very centered person. So I think when I started dating Vivi, he actually liked it, right? He supported it. But he didn't say anything at first, so of course I was very nervous. So I remember very clearly the first day that I came to the academy after, Vivi and I, we had our first date. And I said, man, I don't know how I'm going to say this to Marcio. But then when I went to talk to him, he started to laugh, and he made me feel very comfortable. He was like, man, I'm happy, I hope you guys connect, because I think you guys will be great for each other, So he was very supportive. But to answer your question, yes, man, I had to ask permission, and I got it. So I was lucky. We got married, 8 years later or 7 years later, and now we have 2 beautiful daughters, and we have our life together. Nice, man. That's wonderful. So before we close, anyone that you want to shout out or thank, just shout out or thank?
Man, Marty, it's a lot of people, right? Because everything that I do with, there's a huge team, every front that I'm working towards, from competition to coaching. So I just want to thank Gracie Barra, for the incredible, every Gracie Barra team member, for the incredible support over the years, the position that I play in the team. A lot of times I have to bring the new approach, like the new way of seeing things or the new way of doing things. And I've always had the trust from my teammates. So we've been able to create an incredible organization together. And the fact that I've always had everyone's support with the new ideas, it's something that has made my job certainly much easier, so just want to thank every single person from Gracie Barra, all of my students, everybody that puts their trust on me. You all rest assured that I'll continue to do my very best to move our organization and each one of us forward in Jiu-Jitsu.
Excellent. And I need to ask before we close, what do you feel like makes Gracie Barra such an awesome organization?
Man, we, like the people from Gracie Barra, they have this, we touched on this, we have the sense of that we are on a mission. And this mission is beneficial for everyone, right? Carlos really created something special on the way he taught us to build relationships. There's nothing that I do that is going to be just for me. Everything that I do, I'm taught to do in a way that's going to benefit the whole team. And everybody does the same. So you create this incredible bond of this brotherhood that what Professor Draculino or Professor Romulo Barral or Professor Jefferson Moore, everything that they're doing is helping me, and everything that I'm doing is helping them. And we're all on this mission, and we put the team in front of us. Like, so whenever we're in a crossroads, that if I go right, I'm just going to benefit myself and I'm going to hurt the team. Or I go left and I'm going to sacrifice myself, but I'm going to benefit the team. I always go left. We always put the team in front of us. And we've been doing that for many, many, many generations. So you feel like every day you feel excited. Like when Monday morning comes, you're not dragging yourself to go teach. You're like, man, I'm on a mission. I want to teach jiu-jitsu for everyone. I want to change people's lives through jiu-jitsu. I want to keep our legacy alive, you know. And this is real. These are not just things that we say. Like, we are on a mission. And we feel protected. You know, if something happens to me, if one day something happens, you know, I die, right? I know that Gracie Barra is going to adapt and they're going to send reinforcement and everything is going to be fine. So you feel protected, you know, and that's what is really, really special, you know. That's loyalty at a level that I believe very few people had a chance to experience in their lives, especially in matters of work, you know.
Nice. Well, you certainly, as an organization, you certainly seem to have found the recipe that works well, for sure. So hats off to you on that. So, Professor, you're a class act. You've accomplished so much and impacted so many people's lives during your career, and I'm sure that you will continue to do so in this next chapter of your life. So I love your attitude, and I really appreciate you taking time to share with me and my listeners a little bit more about you and your life. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Marty. I wish you guys well. Keep training, keep working, keep enjoying your jiu-jitsu.
Absolutely. Long, healthy, happy life, sir.
Thanks, man.
Okay, really enjoyed speaking with Professor Flavio. What a great leader and awesome person he is. Up next is the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment.
There is no greater pain than that of regret. Nothing can kill your soul more than the feeling of regret. Never be afraid to take a risk in life. Never be afraid to take a risk going after what you really want. You may fail. You will most likely fail often. But failure going after your dreams is nothing compared to the failure that is settling for a life that you don't want. It's never too late to try again. It's never too late to decide you want more out of life. It's never too late. It's never too late to commit to make this day, this very day, the best of your life. To create opportunities for yourself, to be positive, to rise above average thoughts. It's never too late to reinvent yourself, to learn something new, to grow, to feel good again. No matter what has happened or failed to happen in your past, it is never too late, but only if you are committed. Only if you want to change. Do you want to change? Do you want more out of life? You wouldn't be the first person on earth to turn everything around. It is not impossible. All it takes is your commitment, your courage, and your desire to be better. Most people don't change because they lack courage. Because they fear the unknown. They fear failure. You are different. You have the courage to try. Don't fear failure. Fear being in the exact same place next year as you are today.
And that's going to do it for this edition of the show. As always, I thank you for listening. Hope you're enjoying the show. If you feel like you're benefiting from the show and want to show your support, you can support us on our Patreon page and a link in the show notes. Please like and follow us on social media and help us spread the word by reposting our posts and telling others about the show. You can leave comments on the website at www.graciejujitsurocks.com. You can also go to iTunes and leave comments as well as rate the show, and we would appreciate a 5-star rating, which helps us with our standing in iTunes. You can also leave comments on our YouTube channel. If you have suggestions for the show, please don't hesitate to give those. We always like feedback and suggestions. Okay, that's going to do it. So until next time, this is Marty Josie, and I'll see you on the mat.